Hello everyone, welcome back. Today's video is going to be a little different. Partially a Python project video, but it's also going to play into our little CTF guide that we're working on. Today we're going to be addressing something I wanted to do for a while. It's about how to make a Python script to help you automate SQL injections. Now the biggest thing that I like to do with SQL injections is of course login prompts. And I have a box on my home lab here that we're going to be using called BWAPP. And if you're interested in it, I'll leave a link in the description where you can grab it. And hopefully, if I can find some instructions on installing and stuff, I will. Pretty simple. The method I use is I use Portainer on a server, and I just load it in a Portainer box. So pretty simple and straightforward. I'm going to show you the page that we're going to be using. We're going to go over some information that we gathered with Burp Suite. I'm going to show you two Python scripts. One is just a basic interaction with the website, make sure we can talk to it and get a response back. And the second one's where we're actually going to send the payload to try to find out if there's anything that works with an SQL injection on the login. So let's hop over into my box and let's get started. Alright, so here we go. We got the page pulled up for the BWAPP. And we've got the SQL Injection Login Form Hero option. That's what we'll be working with today. Now, if you're not familiar with this tool, it's actually a really cool tool to have and to set up so you can have a lot of targets to try different things with web hacking. So as you can see here, we've got HTML injections. We got a bunch of different SQL injections, broken authentication, sessions management, cross-site scripting, denial of service, man in the middle. You have a huge playground here to play with. So definitely something I recommend if you want to get better at web hacking. So real quick with this one, this is going to be after we've already done our recon phase. We found this login page, right? So now we need to figure out and play around with it a little bit. We need to figure out, is there any clues to help us figuring out what might be able to log in? So normally, I always do admin first. And you see it says invalid credentials. So on the surface, this isn't really going to give us much like, say, what a WordPress site would, whereas if you get the username right but the password wrong, it will say invalid credentials for such user. So then at least you got a user right. This, we're not going to have that. And if we look in the source, we're not going to get much of anything. Well, let me not highlight that. View page source, there we go. So if you look through this, it's pretty much kind of what you expect just by looking at the page, all your links, all your information, the security level, which for this one we are staying on 0. And come down here, so like here's that little drop down menu that I showed you of all the stuff. And that's really it. There's nothing here. So normally you would have to go through another process to kind of test things out to see what type of methodology you would want to attack this login with. But here we know it's going to be an SQL injection. So over here in Burp Suite, I'd already sent and captured it. So here in the bottom left, you'll see that is a post when you log in. You see here admin was sent with the form submit. And this right here is the session ID I got for logging into the BWAPP website. That's actually crucial. When you're looking for stuff like this, your PHP IDs and stuff like that can play a pivotal role in whether or not you'll get a successful acknowledgement or not. Now, a few other things to note here is you see we got a lot of information in the headers here, and that's going to play in part when we do our Python script. Now, over here in the response, I can't see my little bar. So if we scroll back up here, you can see here we got a 200 OK. So even though this was an invalid login, we're still getting a response code of 200, which is something to note. And it just goes through here. It's pretty much kind of the same stuff we looked at when we viewed page source, except when we scroll down, there it is. We get this invalid credentials. That's going to be a key thing that we're going to utilize here to determine whether or not a login worked or not. So now I've showed you that, let's step over and take a look at our first Python script. Okay, here we are. I'm in NVim, and I just called this SQL_1 for our first Python. And I haven't set my NVim up too much on this, so if you have a hard time seeing the text, let me know, and I'll get that changed, hopefully make it a little bit easier for everybody to see. So of course up here, I've got my shebang for Python, so that way we can just give this file executable and run it without having to type the whole Python command, all that stuff. We're only using one library for this, which is the request library, which is a default library in most cases, but you can simply install it with pip install request if it's not on your machine. Target here, I've got it set to the IP address of that box and the specific page that we are looking for. As you can see right here in the address bar, it is SQLI_3 that we're working with. So here, I copy and pasted the header from Burp Suite in here. Now, when you're doing stuff like this, you won't always need all of the information in the header, but I would say go ahead and make it a habit to grab all the information to put in here to make sure you got everything covered, right? And down here, we're setting up a payload. Got login, password, form, admin, pass, submit. And if you remember on the Burp Sweep over here, we have login is admin, password is admin, form is submit. And this right here is how you would actually write that out in Python, so the package can actually send it correctly. And then all we're doing down here is we're setting a P variable, which bad naming convention, I know, it's just what I did. We're doing the request.post, because if you remember, when we looked at Burp Suite, it is a post, not a get. And we're giving it the target address up here. Then we're going to give it our data payload, which is this information, and then we'll pass our headers. I know when I broke it down, I did the headers first. So that's the stuff that's not going to change a lot. I like just kind of go ahead and put those up at top. So that way payload and everything I have down at the bottom, I can put in loops and do stuff I need to with it. So we're going to send this, and we're going to print out the status code. And we're going to look if invalid credentials, like I showed you in Burp Suite, is in the text of that response. And if it is, we'll see bad SQL injection printed out to the screen. So all we need to do is sql1.py. As you can see, 200, and sure enough, we get a bad SQL injection. So we are able to talk to the page, we're able to get a response and verify that we did not meet the login criteria. So let's get the next script pulled up here. All right, so you see we're starting out the same way. We've got our shebang, importing request, our target's the same, our header's the same. But now down here, we're going to open up a text file called payload.txt, and I'll show you that in just a minute. And we're going to pull in all the data from that into a variable called payloads. And then we're going to loop through each item in the payload, because when we do the read lines, that's going to give us a list. So we want to iterate through each item in the list. We're going to set the payload itself to the item stripping the new line. That's a very important thing. When you're pulling stuff in from a text file, you got to remember to strip that new line at the end, or else it could give you all sorts of errors or give you false positives or just not give you anything at all. And then we'll set our data here for login is our payload, password, and form. And then from here, it's pretty much the same. We're just keeping inside this for loops. That way, each item in that list will send a request. So we got a request, post, target, data. No different naming from the other one. I apologize for that. It's just how it came out while I was typing it. And then we'll pass our headers. Now, the important thing here is if invalid credentials not in the text and error not in text, then we print out found possible injection payload. Now, what is this? This was something I stumbled across, and this is something you kind of need to do too when you're trying to make these scripts, is throw a couple of the payloads added to see if you get any error codes or anything. So you need to filter those out, so that way you can only see the positives or potential positives. So basically this comes back, in this case, when there is a syntax error in the SQL. So that's what I'm catching here. It just says error : space right at the beginning of it, so I'm able to just catch it that way. And now let's run it. And there you go. We found potentially 3 possible injections. So let's copy the first one here. Go back over to our web page. Drop that in. We'll just do a password of pass, login, and there you go. Welcome, Neo. So that's a short little video about building a script to automate the SQL injection process. Now, the key, that text file I mentioned. So I'll leave a link to this GitHub down below, but it's one that I've come back to time and time again, and I really like. It is payload box SQL injection payload list. A lot of good information here. A few years old, information still works, payloads still work. They're great for testing. He goes into a little bit down here about how this stuff works, how the SQL works, which is great if you're not familiar with it. I'm not going to go in depth on that here. If you would like a more in-depth video on SQL, I would highly recommend looking up videos on YouTube of people talking about how to interact with an SQL database, because the type of queries you do is basically what you're doing with an SQL injection and hacking. So learning how to set up a database, how to add data, how to manipulate it, stuff like that's going to help you out with SQL injection so you understand what it is you're doing. He goes into a little bit about some of the different types and stuff like this, which is really nice. He gives you a list of vulnerability scanning tools. SQL Maps, one of my favorites. I always use it. Really like it. Some of these I haven't tried out yet. I've heard about them. Explo is an interesting one I've seen some people use from time to time. But then we come down here and like generic SQL injection payloads, some basic stuff. I probably could have used this, but I skipped it. And error-based payloads, so you're looking for errors in this case to get information. But the one that I used, there we go. SQL injection auth bypass payloads. That's what I used. All I did was just click this button to copy it, open up a text file in Nano, paste it in, save it. There you go. So basically what the Python script does, it goes through each line, tests each one of these. So if you look, this admin or 1 = 1 £, you can scroll down through here, and right there you go. Admin or 1 = 1 £. So you can see it has a lot of things it tested there. And what the nice thing is about doing a tool like this is, one, it helps you to learn more about interacting with the websites and the process. Two, it gives you a base where you can add more into your payloads. Like you could sit here and go through all these that he has and load them all into that one text file, add in stuff that you find from doing CTFs, and just have a massive payload text file that you can throw at something to see what happens. Alright, so that was it for today's video. Interesting little script. Great resource to use to learn the BWAPP tool. Like I said, I'll leave a link in the description down below. You can go check it out, install it yourself, play around with it. And I want to reiterate, I'm always going to advocate for people learning how to manually do things, how to do it the hard way. But it's always okay to do scripts. It's always okay to use tools. But if you don't take the time to learn how things work and why they work the way they do, then the tools aren't really going to get you anywhere. And that's one reason why, even though we have a lot of tools for SQL injection, I kind of wanted to make my own to play around with and to kind of show you and to encourage you, because it helps you to learn what's going on and how it works and how to interact with it. So I really hope you found this video interesting. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And again, a huge thanks to everybody who has. I really appreciate it. And let me know down in the comments, is there anything you would have done different with this script? Maybe something you would have added? What's your take on it? I'd like to hear about it. I hope you have a good day. I'll see you next time.